that installing some kind of underlayment, whether it be a backer board or an uncoupling membrane, that it's enough.
You should install the right mortar for the right tile for the right job. You should install it with the right trowel and mix it properly.
Okay, so I'm with Mark Heinlein. How you doing, Mark?
Hey, I'm great, Sal.
I haven't seen you since coverings.
It has been coverings. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you. So anyway, we're here at the tile shop. We're doing a NTCA workshop, something that I attend every year, and whenever Mark is in town or there is anything going on with the NTCA. And I'm just going to let Mark introduce himself and give us his credentials.
Well, hi everyone. I'm Mark Heinlein, and I'm the Director of Training for the National Tile Contractors Association. That's a mouthful, but the abbreviation is NTCA, and we're the world's largest association of tile contractors. And I'm on the NTCA staff, and our mission is based on industry standards-based training for the tile industry.
So, one of the things that Mark has to do besides training people, and Mark here is one of the most knowledgeable people that I know that about tile installation and anything to do with tile. So whatever he says is gospel. I know that's a lot to say, but it's true. He's very, very knowledgeable. And what we want to do today is talk about some really common failures that I hear about all the time and that Mark hears about all the time. He has to field these questions. It's part of his job. And we just want to see if we can shed some light on why things fail and how common it is. And it's not just a regional thing, it's all over the country.
Well, that's right, Sal. And let me clarify something. NTCA, I mentioned, it does standards-based training. The tile industry has industry standards, and the NTCA and many other people, of course, use those standards to produce great tile installations. So when we provide technical support to our members, Sal, we follow the standards, and that's where we get our guidance for great tile installations. So that's rock solid information that we can work with.
I've mentioned the TCNA handbook many, many times, and it's a lot of times people ask questions in my videos and they will say, what about this, what about that? And I will actually refer to a method in the, when I answer the question. TCNA methods are gospel. The TCNA handbook is the tile setter's Bible, if you want to call it that. And the only thing that might trump that is manufacturer's recommendations. If a manufacturer says to do something a certain way, then that will be over what the TCNA handbook says.
That's right, exactly right. So, Sal, you asked about failures.
Yes.
There are failures, unfortunately, in the tile industry, as you well know. I know you've done some programs on them.
Yes, I've done actually quite a few videos, and it seems that, and a lot of people ask me a lot of times, they say, can I just install my backer board without any cement under it? Or can I just go over some hard wood with my tile if I install some uncoupling membrane and things like that? And Mark, even though I hear about these all the time and people ask me all the time, Mark actually hears a lot more about it.
Well, you have a large audience, Sal, and I have the privilege of traveling the United States in an NTCA van, and we have several other trainers that do as well, and we cover the entire country. And as we go over the country, we go from top to bottom, left to right. I hear from people, I hear from contractors and installers about things they see in their area. And it's kind of funny to think about, and it's maybe funny for me, but I hear the same thing everywhere I go. I hear the same failures, the same installation difficulties, pretty much, like I said, a broken record no matter where I'm at.
Everywhere you go, people that are installing tile, so-called installers that haven't had any kind of training, and there's plenty of training available. Not only does NTCA do free workshops, any installer can attend these trainings. They're completely free, and there's a lot to be learned here, and it's well worth the effort to come to one of these. And not only that, manufacturers have all kinds of training as well. Most of them are free, and they want you to come, so when you install their products, you install them properly.
That's right. We're on your team. We want you to have the best information there is and to not have a failure. Those manufacturers that Sal mentioned, they do a couple of things. Well, they do many things. One of the things they do is they support the training that the NTCA does. They're a huge sponsor of our programs, and they believe in it because they also follow the industry standards.
So why don't we talk about some typical failures in general?
Okay.
What do you have in mind, Mark?
Well, an interesting one you mentioned briefly, I heard you say, is people, they want to install tile, and it's even hard for me to say. I'm stuttering a little bit because it just doesn't make sense to me, because I understand the problems that it can generate. They want to install tile over something like strip plank structural flooring, or they want to install it over tongue and groove hardwood flooring.
Dimensional lumber hardwood flooring.
Exactly, in a remodeling circumstance.
And usually what the problem is, they don't want to rip out, for example, if it's hardwood, they don't want to go through the difficulty of ripping it out, and they're hoping against hope that installing some kind of underlayment, whether it be a backer board or an uncoupling membrane, that it's enough.
And it's not enough. Even the manufacturers of those underlayments or those other substrates will tell you that, no, you need to get that material out of there.
There's just simply too much movement. Expansion and contraction it will just overwhelm the installation, and it might not happen in a day or a week or a month, but eventually it's going to start falling apart.
Speaking of movement, Sal, movement and expansion, buildings, the materials in them, they're all designed to move and expand and contract through the course of their lifespan. And as buildings move, as they expand, they contract, walls move, floors move, our tile installation has to be done such that it can not be affected by that movement in a structure.
In fact, I've actually mentioned it quite a number of times on my videos, EJ 171, which deals with movement joints and, to allow for expansion and contraction. And a lot of guys, what they'll do is they'll get a floor that's 30 feet long by 50 feet wide. They'll install the floor and then not leave any room for movement anywhere, and grout it hard against the baseboard, and then certain amount of time it starts to fail. And why does that happen, Mark?
Well, because things expand and contract. If they grout it hard against the baseboard, hard against the wall, hard against the door frame or the sill or anywhere, that grout won't give, that tile won't give when that expansion occurs or that wall movement occurs. And the tile will be caused to fail.
Yeah, even if you just think about it, if you've got a 60-foot run of tile, and the expansion of each tile is, let's just say a number like a 64th of an inch, probably not even that, but over 60 feet, that's an inch. Say if it's 128th of an inch or whatever, that's a certain number of that's an amount that the tile has to move to expand or contract, and if it can't do that, something's going to happen. Something has to give.
You know, Sal, I was recently in a very famous mall in this country, and I was in a restaurant in this very famous mall, and went in and had something to eat, and as I was coming out, I noticed on the wall there was a tile missing, and I could see behind that tile, and it was about at eye level, that it had been, people call it spot bonding. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes.
So this one I could tell had been spot bonded, but I could also see there were no grout joints, and there were none of these expansion joints. And the manager came up to me, and he said, "Oh, sir, I see you looking at that wall. Do you want to hear what happened?" I told him I'd love to hear. And he said, I happened to be here when that happened, and that tile exploded off the wall, and it traveled 30 feet, and it smashed into the wall on the other side of the restaurant.
You can go on YouTube and search for tenting tile. I'm not going to tell you what you're going to find. You're going to find some videos and just watch those, and that is what happens when you don't leave any room for movement. Everything expands and contracts. Everything is sensitive to, maybe not everything, but pretty much everything. It's sensitive to moisture and temperature. And the changes in those will make the material move. And you have to allow for that movement in one way or another.
I have installers come up to me at my workshop, Sal, and they tell me, Mark, you know, you talked about this sealant stuff, this soft joint stuff. I'll tell you what, Mark, we don't use that stuff. We grout. We put grout in the corners. And I'm here to tell you that I do travel the country, and I see a lot of truck stops and motel rooms and hotel rooms and restaurants. And all of those hard grouted corners, I would say 99+% of them, they're cracked. They're broken.
Try this for yourself. Next time you go to a restaurant, next time you go to a mall, next time you go anywhere and you have to use the bathroom, even if you don't have to use it, just go in, look at the corners. I'm not going to say guaranteed, but pretty much every time you'll see there's cracks in the corners. And many times what they've done is they've gotten some ugly kind of sealant, they just slopped it in there to try and cover it up. Notice it. Tile guys, they go into a bathroom, they see an installation, they look at it, and they start to pick out what's right and what's wrong. It's a curse, actually, because you can't.
It is.
Because you can't look at things and just enjoy them for what they are. So just do that. Next time you go into a bathroom, just look, and then you say, yeah, Mark and Sal were right.
You know, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of beautiful tile work out there too. And the people that install those jobs, they are well trained, well experienced, they care about what they're doing, and a lot of times they're certified even. And that is an important thing to watch for in a tile installer. And you know, one of the other things that I want to talk about, Sal, if I could, is for me as a tile contractor and an installer and now the director of training for the NTCA, the most critical thing is substrate prep. Making sure our substrates, our structure can support the installation, and making sure it's properly flattened before we install our tile.
This is another thing that I hear all the time. You know, people say, well, I got this floor that it's got plywood on it, and I just don't want to install tile on it. The first thing I say to them: have you checked the deflection? Have you checked your joist structure? Have you looked to see if your floor can actually support the tile? Just because you want something doesn't mean you can automatically just go ahead and install it. If you want that, you might have to rectify the problems with the deflection by adding support of some kind. That's not the tile guy's job either. That's the job of an engineer or someone that has training to figure out what that the structure needs to improve it to be able to support tile. But the important thing is, before you start, check to see what your deflection is.
A friend of ours, Sal, he's well known in the tile industry, has told me just because it's there doesn't mean or it should or could be tiled.
Exactly, and that's the exact point I want to make. And just something that Mark alluded to just a minute ago, there are plenty of very well qualified and fantastic installers. I actually know quite a few of them because I travel around, I go to coverings and I go to NTCA events, and I go to training, so I meet a lot of people, and I'm on some closed Facebook groups that just for tile people, and I've gotten to meet a lot of these people in person. So there's plenty of qualified installers out there. You just have to be able to find them.
And one of the ways you find them, Sal, is by looking at a couple of websites. You can look at the Ceramic Tile Education Foundation's website.
Just 1 second.
Sure.
By the way, I'm going to put links in the description to the NTCA and the CTEF, and I've actually alluded to those many times, and actually have suggest that people go to those in emails and in my answers to my comments. So sorry about that.
That's fine, Sal. These people on the CTEF website that have put themselves through...
What's the CTEF stand for?
That's the Ceramic Tile Education Foundation.
Okay.
It's part of what I call the alphabet soup of the tile industry. You know, you have the CTEF, the NTCA, the TCNA, ANSI. Oh boy, you know, it's all that stuff. But I think we have a video online where we can talk about that some more.
You know, we talk about training and finding out what the proper methods and standards are, ANSI, et cetera, whatever. But what about those guys that say they've been installing tile for 30 years and they've never had a problem?
I've met a lot of those people. I guess I believe them, but you know what? I've had a problem. I've had callbacks, and I've gone to fix my callbacks, and I've learned from them. Those people may not realize that they've had a failure because maybe they haven't gotten the phone call when their job failed.
So if you're a tile installer and say you give someone a year or two warranty, and then the tile fails in 5-6 years' time, and are you going to call back the same person to replace it, or are you going to call someone that maybe will do a better job?
Think about it. You want to do that person, you want to hire that person, you want to interview that person that's going to do it right the first time. You want to look at their resume, look at their qualifications, look at their education, look at their certifications, look at their references. That's how you can find a great tile installer and a contractor. Ask if they're a member of their professional association. And for the tile industry, that's the National Tile Contractors Association. On the NTCA's website, Sal, is a member search directory there as well.
I've often pointed that out to many people. They ask me, where can I'm in New York, I need a tile contractor. If I know a tile contractor in a certain area, I will contact them, and then I'll ask them, are they interested in a job, and then I will refer them. But that's not easy to do. So most of the time, I will just refer them to the CTEF website or the NTCA website, where they can, like Mark said, look for a contractor that's certified or that is a member, and they will have much better luck getting someone that knows what they're doing.
And you know why, Sal? It's because people that are professionals that have connected themselves to their industry,
They care.
They care. They get it. They're the ones who care. They're returning members year after year after year.
And they go to trainings like this one. They when new products come out or something that they don't know how to do, it's the first time that they've had to deal with it, they make a call, they do the research, they know where to look to find the answers, so they're not just guessing. They know where to get the information to install that product successfully.
And just because you're a member of your professional association doesn't mean you know everything. You might, but you know what? I don't know everything. And I'm fortunate to be on the NTCA's technical team. We answer questions to our members, from our members. We help support them with their installations. So our technical team exists as one of the member benefits to answer those difficult questions about tile installations. And like we started talking about right away, we base our answers off the tile industry standards to give our members rock-solid information.
So what do you say to those people that say, ANSI standards, who needs them?
Well, I say everybody needs them. When we don't use those, we're applying risk, or we're accepting risk for doing it our way. The standards help alleviate that risk. Now, every business needs to have some sort of risk, but when you do that job to the best of your ability with following the standards, methods, and best practices, then you're going to have much less risk. Your owner, your customer, will be very likely happy with your installation. It'll stand the test of time.
A lot of times the way I describe it is this. Let's say you've got 100 things that you have to do on a tile job so that it'll be successful and you won't have a problem. If you do one thing wrong, if it's not a critical thing, the installation's probably going to be okay. If you do two things wrong, now you've doubled the chances of it failing. if you don't know any of the 100 things and you're just guessing at all of them, doesn't mean it's going to fail, but the chances are extremely high that it will. So the more you do wrong, the higher your chances are of having a problem.
Tiling ain't easy, Sal.
Oh, tell me about it.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And the thing about tile, it's a finish, but it's a permanent finish.
And it's what everyone looks at. What's under it? So even if you get someone that does a beautiful tile job, you look at it and, oh, it looks perfect. And then 6 months later, it starts to fall apart. What that's telling you is the finish is very important, but what's under it is more important.
That's right. Everything beneath that installation supports it. The finished work may look beautiful, but was it bonded properly? Was the proper mortar selected? Was that mortar mixed properly? Was that substrate flattened correctly? Was that substrate installed correctly? Was it installed to a properly flattened substrate beneath it? All of these things matter, and it's not just floors, it's walls.
Walls, everything. It has to be done in such a way that you know what the outcome is going to be. And just guessing at it, for example, if you get like a lot of times you'll see people going into one of these box stores, they've got like a 12 by 24 inch tile. They put it on their cart, they grab a bucket of mastic, put it on their cart, and then they walk out the door. Guaranteed they're going to have a problem.
So, there is a place for mastic. There are a couple of places for it, and it's a good product if used properly. But that's where a professional, experienced installer comes in. They know what their products are, where they should be used, and how to use and apply them.
Just so that you know, get a bucket of mastic, get a 12 by 24 inch tile, put it down, come back in a year's time and pick it up.
Be a pretty easy job to pick it up.
Then you'll know why you're not supposed to use it.
Right.
But anyway, anything else you want to talk about?
Sal, I made a list here so we wouldn't forget anything.
Okay, great.
I mentioned our technical team at NTCA. One of the questions I've gotten recently is about installing stone and stone
Yes.
requires over a wood substrate. It requires a second layer of wood, Sal.
Why is that, Mark?
For support of the stone, to make sure that there's not the deflection in that substrate, so our stone installation
And
doesn't
not
break.
only the deflection of the joist, but also between the joists.
Between the joists is probably where most of the deflection happens.
Yep.
Yeah. So that second layer is required on a wood substrate, a wood structure.
So why is stone L over 720, which is twice that of ceramic tile? Because you can control how a man-made product is made, what the strength is. When you dig it out of a mountain, you don't know what fissures, what defects, what problems it might have.
There are committees of very, very smart people that put these methods, best practices, these standards together. They've done the testing, Sal, and they've written them such to give us formulas like L over 720 for stone to help us, the installer, the installation contractor, and the architect and the designer, the specifier, the entire tile industry community to avoid having a problem. So that L over 720 with stone, for stone, is
That's a known number.
A known number. It's a great benchmark that may be above where it needs to be to avoid having a problem with our install.
So it might be above, but that's so you have like a safety factor included. And so how do you determine deflection?
Well, it's very difficult for me as a tile contractor. I'm not an engineer. I know a lot of things. I'm not a trained engineer. I'm a tile installer and contractor. So that's the job of an engineer or somebody who has that ability to look at the substructure, the span of the joist, the length of the joist, the depth of the joist, the species of the wood, the load that will be carried by the floor, the dead load, the live load, the party at the holiday.
Not a simple formula.
Grandma's making bread and pie and everybody's standing around and singing.
So to have like an initial check, there's actually an app that you can put all these numbers in and it will give you a number. So that's one way of finding out, but to actually have the exact number and to know, take all these variables into account, And that's an engineer's job. It's not the job of a tile guy. The tile guy can go in, he can use his app, he can measure the joists, he can measure the unsupported span, he can, all that stuff, and he's going to come up with a number. And that's going to tell him more or less whether it can hold tile. But if you need to know the exact number, it's not the job of a tile guy.
It comes down to that risk again.
Yeah.
So if the tile guy wants to figure their own deflection, that's fine. But they're taking on the risk for calculating that and making sure it'll work right.
Yeah, a lot of times I've actually used, the first thing I do when someone calls me for a tile job, I go down to the basement and take a look around, just to see what they have. And then I'll use I'll put the link to the app in the description, and it gives me that number that says, oh, it's L over 360, so it should be good for tile. So I'll look at that number and I'll see what the deflection is. And if it comes below the number, the L over 360, I will inform the homeowner and tell them, look, this doesn't conform to what you need it to conform to. But I can't tell you how to fix it. I can give you an idea, but to know exactly how to fix it, you have to contact someone that's capable of doing the calculations and telling you where you need to put a post or a beam or assist some joists or whatever to get you to that number. I can just tell you that you're not reaching that number by what I see, and then you need to figure that out before you can install your tile.
Right. So very important. Substrate prep, deflection, all of these things. One of the training classes the NTCA does is a full-day training program, and we talk about nothing but substrate prep for large format tile. That's what we do all day on.
Yeah, today they make tiles that are 10 feet by 5 feet. Imagine trying to put that on a floor that's got an undulation of like half an inch over that 10 feet. How do you put that in? You can't. You need to fix it before you can install it.
There's a standard for installing that gauge porcelain tile and panels.
Yeah, and if just by chance, if you're thinking about doing that, make sure you get someone that's been trained to it. Go onto the manufacturer's website, and a lot of times they will have a list of people that are capable of, that have been trained and that will be able to do it.
Exactly.
So what we're trying to get at here too is that just because someone is installing tile doesn't necessarily mean they know how to do it, even if they've been doing it for 30 years.
We hear that a lot. 30 years, those 30-year guys are great. And many of them do what they should do. And you know what that is, Sal? They go to get training. They come to the training programs. They educate themselves on new standards, materials, products.
I just want to make a point here. So those 30-year guys, I'm one of those 30-year guys. I've been installing tile for 35 years. And look where I am. I'm talking to Mark.
Look where I am. I'm talking to Sal. That's pretty great, right? And that's what connects us in the tile industry.
Yeah. And I've known Mark now for a number of years. And every time he shows up, or I go to some place that he is, I go find him and I talk to him and we discuss tile and we tell our stories.
We do, and it's a great time. Yeah, but let's check our list.
Yeah.
We were going to talk about deflection, stone. We're going to talk about lippage.
Oh, lippage. You want to go over lippage?
Sure, we can talk about lippage. So lippage, you know what lippage is, Sal?
Yeah, I do know what lippage is, and unfortunately I see a lot of it around. That's where one tile is higher than the other, and they're not, both tiles aren't in plane. One tile is sticking up beyond the other one.
Yeah.
And there's a standard for that as well.
There is a standard for that. And the standard for that, I'll just tell you quickly what that standard is. You have to use tile that was manufactured to meet the industry standards. Then you have to have a flat substrate, you have the right mortar, and then you have to have a skilled installer that has some skill in making those tiles flat, and they know how to properly mix their mortar. They know the right grout joint width to have in the installation.
There's actually a rule of thumb for that?
There is. There's a standard for that. And there's also a standard for the pattern the tile can be set in. All of these things come together, and lippage is the difference in height between two adjacent tiles. And there's a standard for lippage. We sometimes get calls about asking what that standard is. To meet the standard for lippage, first of all, you need to install tile that was designed to meet the tile manufacturing standard. Then you need to have that properly flattened substrate I was talking about. You should install the right mortar for the right tile for the right job. You should install it with the right trowel and mix it properly, mix that mortar properly.
Especially for large format tiles, you want to use a dry set mortar that's actually designed for large format tiles, because it's going to have a thicker bonding coat. So you want to have a mortar that's going to be able to be used at that depth.
But you never want to use any mortar to flatten the substrate with.
That's right. You want to use the proper patching or rendering materials, usually cementitious rendering materials, to flatten your floor.
That's right. So then use the mortar on top of that, and with a skilled installer, you can get a nice flat finished tile without lippage, a tile installation without lippage. But the thing is, an installer does have human error. A little bit of human error is allowed.
No one's perfect.
No one is. You know, I'm an okay tile installer. Sal is a great tile installer. I'm allowed a little bit of lippage for my human error in the job, and that comes out of our industry standards. So owners of installations, the people that are going to inspect that final installation, Sal, there is a document, a page in the TCNA handbook that you mentioned that tells us how to properly inspect a finished tile installation.
Don't get your magnifying glass out.
Don't get your flashlight out. Use natural lighting in the normal environment that the tile will be used in. If it's a floor, stand up. Look at it from eye level.
60 inches, I think it is.
Yeah.
And then for a wall, I think it's 36 inches.
Yeah. Stand from a normal viewing distance, check it out. It will look great.
Yeah. Like Mark said, no one's perfect. We're all human, and small errors are going to creep in. Especially, you might start out fresh. You just got up, you got to work, and got all kinds of energy. Now it's getting close to 2, 3 o'clock, you're tired, you want to go home. So, just being tired can start to introduce a little bit of, let's not say error, but a little tiny bit of carelessness.
Sometimes we have to know when to stop for the day, because I'll say it again, tiling ain't easy.
It's not easy. It's a hard job.
It is.
So, any other points, Mark?
I think we hit them all, Sal.
I think we did.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was great talking to you, Mark. And I guess I'm going to see you at Coverings next year. Where is it in?
It's in New Orleans.
New Orleans. New Orleans?
No, Nolans? Nolans. We got some friends down there. They'll set us straight.
And that's in, when's that? That's in
April.
May? Yeah, it's April.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be going down there, and I always go to Coverings. It's the event that you want to go to. There's also other Coverings, Surfaces and TSP. What is it?
That's right. Yeah.
I usually don't go to those. At some point, I have to do some work.
Ask your installer if they go to the trade shows. That's another important thing to ask.
And one good question when you get an installer, one good question you can ask them is, do they have a TCNA handbook? If they say what, go look for another one. Go look for another installer.
Sal, that's great advice. It's always a pleasure, sir. Thanks for having me again.
Great seeing you, Mark. Thanks for doing what you do. So leave your comments in the comment section below, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks a lot.